Dawn breaks over the Japanese countryside, casting long shadows across an empty field. The year is 1612, and two men stand facing each other, their breath visible in the cold morning air. One holds two swords, a sight unheard of in formal duels. His opponent, representing one of Japan's most prestigious sword schools, clutches his single blade with white-knuckled determination. Within minutes, one of these men will fall, adding another chapter to what would become the most extraordinary story in samurai history. The man with two swords is Miyamoto Musashi, and he's about to change the art of Japanese swordplay forever. But this duel is just one piece of an incredible saga that would span decades and ultimately create a legend that endures to this day. While many Americans might know Musashi's name from movies or video games, the true story of this warrior philosopher is far more fascinating than any fiction. Picture this: a 13-year-old boy wins his first duel to the death, setting off a journey that would see him fight over 60 duels without ever tasting defeat. This same man would go on to master not just swordsmanship, but painting, sculpture, and military strategy, eventually writing one of the most influential books on combat and strategy ever penned. A book still studied by business leaders and military strategists today. But who was the real Miyamoto Musashi? Born in 1584, during Japan's turbulent Sengoku period, his early life was marked by chaos and warfare. His father, either a samurai or a martial artist himself, disappeared from young Musashi's life early on, leaving him to be raised by an uncle. This abandonment would shape Musashi's personality and drive him toward a relentless pursuit of martial perfection. At an age when modern teenagers are worried about social media and school grades, Musashi was already engaging in matters of life and death. His first duel at age 13 was against a traveling swordsman named Arima Kihei. Kihei had posted a challenge sign, a common practice of the time, boasting of his prowess and inviting all comers to face him. Young Musashi accepted. The local villagers tried to dissuade him, seeing only a child facing a grown warrior. But Musashi was insistent. When the duel began, he charged at Kihei with a stick, knocked the grown man down, and beat him to death. This victory, brutal as it was, marked the beginning of a career that would redefine what was possible with a sword. But Musashi's approach to combat was anything but traditional. In an era when samurai prided themselves on rigid formality and elegant technique, Musashi was pragmatic to the point of being revolutionary. He would show up late to duels to unnerve his opponents. He'd fight with wooden swords against real ones. He developed a two-sword style at a time when such a thing was considered absurd. Take, for example, his most famous duel against Sasaki Kojiro, known as the Demon of Western Japan. Kojiro was renowned for his swallow cut, a technique so swift and precise it could supposedly strike a bird in mid-flight. The duel was set to take place on a small island. Musashi arrived hours late, having carved a wooden sword from a boat oar on his way. This psychological warfare was deliberate. He knew that by making Kojiro wait in the hot sun, his opponent's composure and energy would be affected. When the duel finally began, Musashi used the longer reach of his improvised wooden sword to strike Kojiro down before his opponent could even complete his famous technique. It was this combination of psychological insight and tactical innovation that made Musashi nearly impossible to defeat. But perhaps what's most remarkable about Musashi is that he was never satisfied with simply being unbeatable with a sword. He pursued mastery in multiple fields, following a philosophy he called Heiho, the way of strategy. He believed that understanding one thing deeply meant understanding all things. This led him to become accomplished in painting, sculpture, and writing, approaching each discipline with the same intensity he brought to swordsmanship. His art wasn't mere hobby work. His paintings are considered masterpieces of the Zen tradition. Using the same focus and economy of movement that made him lethal with a sword, He could capture the essence of a bird or a landscape with just a few brilliant brush strokes. This combination of warrior and artist might seem strange to modern viewers, but it perfectly embodied the samurai ideal of Bunbu Ryodo, the way of both pen and sword. As we delve deeper into Musashi's story, we'll explore how this complex man became more than just a swordsman. He became a symbol of the relentless pursuit of perfection. His life would influence not just martial arts, but Japanese culture as a whole, and eventually reach across centuries to inspire people around the world. The principles he discovered through countless duels and years of reflection would transcend both his time and culture, speaking to universal truths about strategy, conflict, and the path to mastery. What made Musashi different from other legendary warriors was his complete rejection of the traditional samurai mindset. While most samurai of his era were obsessed with honor, ceremony, and proper form, Musashi focused solely on winning. This pragmatic approach would have seemed shocking, even sacrilegious, to many of his contemporaries. But it's precisely this mindset that modern military strategists and business leaders find so compelling. Consider his famous duel against the Yoshioka School, one of the most prestigious martial arts academies in Kyoto. After defeating the school's headmaster in a formal duel, Musashi was challenged by the master's brother. He defeated him as well. Finally, the young son of the original master, now the school's nominal head, issued a challenge. But rather than face a child in single combat, Musashi did something unprecedented. He arrived at the designated dueling ground before dawn, hiding in the surrounding area with both his swords ready. When the young head of the Yoshioka school arrived, he was accompanied by armed retainers. The plan had been to ambush Musashi, but Musashi, having anticipated this, launched his own ambush instead. He burst from hiding, cut down the young head of the school, and then fought his way through dozens of armed warriors. This incident, while perhaps not adhering to the romantic ideals of samurai combat, demonstrated Musashi's core philosophy. In real combat, winning is everything. This philosophy would later be crystallized in his masterwork, The Book of Five Rings. Written near the end of his life, this text outlines principles that transcend mere swordplay. You must understand that there is more than one path to the top of the mountain, he wrote, challenging the rigid thinking of his time. This adaptability would become his trademark. Take his development of the two-sword style, Niten Ichi Ryu, two heavens as one. The conventional wisdom of the time held that two swords would be slower and more unwieldy than one. But Musashi realized that by using a longer sword in his left hand and a shorter one in his right, he could create an almost impenetrable zone of defense while maintaining offensive capabilities. It was like reinventing chess while everyone else was playing checkers. Even more revolutionary was his approach to training. While other schools focused on perfecting specific techniques, Musashi emphasized understanding principles. If you know the way broadly, you will see it in all things, he wrote. He trained himself to fight with either hand, to use improvised weapons, and to understand the psychology of combat at a fundamental level. His duel with the swordmaster Bacon Shishido illustrates this perfectly. Bacon was a master of the kusarigama, a weapon combining a sickle with a weighted chain. It was considered nearly impossible for a swordsman to defeat a kusarigama user. The chain would entangle the sword while the sickle delivered the killing blow. But Musashi, after studying the weapon's principles, positioned himself near a grove of bamboo. When Bacon threw his chain, Musashi stepped aside, letting the chain tangle in the bamboo instead. In the crucial moment it took Bacon to pull his chain free, Musashi closed the distance and ended the fight. But perhaps what's most remarkable about Musashi's career is how he continued to evolve throughout his life. As he aged, he became increasingly interested in the deeper principles underlying combat and strategy. He began to see swordsmanship not just as a means of winning duels, but as a way to understand life itself. This transformation from pure warrior to philosopher-strategist is reflected in his later writings and teachings. He developed what he called the way of strategy, which encompassed far more than just fighting. He applied the same principles he learned in combat to everything from architecture to painting. His famous ink paintings, done late in life, show the same economy of movement and perfect timing that characterized his swordplay. Each brushstroke, like each sword cut, had to be decisive and perfectly placed. This holistic approach to mastery particularly resonates with modern audiences. In an age where we're constantly told to specialize, Musashi's example suggests that true mastery in one area can lead to insights in seemingly unrelated fields. His life demonstrates that the principles of strategy and success are universal, whether you're wielding a sword, running a company, or creating art. As Musashi entered his 40s, a profound transformation began to take place. The man who had spent his youth seeking out duels and testing his skills against all comers began to look beyond mere victory in combat. This transformation would produce insights that continue to influence people across the world today, from CEOs in New York to military strategists in Pentagon war rooms. But this change didn't happen overnight. It began, perhaps, with a curious incident that occurred when Musashi was in his late 30s. After decades of wandering Japan and accepting any challenge that came his way, he received an invitation to serve as a tactical advisor to the powerful Hosokawa clan. For a masterless samurai, ronin, like Musashi, this was an opportunity that most would have jumped at, a chance for stability, prestige, and regular income. Yet, Musashi's response was characteristic of his unique approach to life. While he accepted the position, he refused to live in the castle or accept regular payment. Instead, he chose to reside in a cave called Reigando, which he would eventually make famous through his writings and meditation. This cave, which can still be visited today, offers a powerful symbol of Musashi's journey from warrior to sage. From this austere dwelling, Musashi began to codify the lessons he had learned through his decades of combat and study. But unlike many martial arts masters who simply passed down techniques, Musashi was searching for universal principles. He believed that the truths he had discovered through swordsmanship could be applied to any field of human endeavor. Consider his concept of empty mind, or mushin. While this might sound like abstract philosophy, it was something Musashi had tested countless times in life-or-death situations. He learned that in crucial moments, thinking about technique or strategy could be fatal. True mastery meant moving beyond conscious thought to pure action. Modern sports psychologists call this the zone, that state of perfect performance where action flows naturally without conscious interference. This principle, like many others Musashi discovered, transcended swordsmanship. He applied it to his art, creating paintings and sculptures with the same spontaneous certainty he brought to combat. His most famous painting, Shrike on a Dead Branch, was reportedly completed in a single burst of inspiration, each brushstroke as decisive as a sword cut. But perhaps Musashi's most profound insight was about the nature of conflict itself. Through his undefeated record in duels, he came to understand that the highest form of victory was winning without fighting. This wasn't mere philosophy. It was a practical truth he had discovered through experience. He began to see how the same principles that allowed him to defeat an opponent could be used to resolve conflicts before they began. This understanding led him to develop what he called the spirit of win-win. While this might sound like a modern business concept, Musashi understood it through the lens of combat. He realized that the best strategy wasn't about destroying your opponent, but about creating a situation where victory was inevitable. This principle would later be echoed in Eastern military classics like Sun Tzu's Art of War, and would become a cornerstone of modern strategic thinking. During this period, Musashi also began to understand the deeper meaning of strategy. He saw that true strategy wasn't about having more techniques or better weapons, but about seeing things as they really are. This might sound simple, but it's profoundly difficult. Our preconceptions, our desires, and our fears all distort our perception of reality. Musashi's genius was in recognizing that clear perception was the foundation of all strategy. He demonstrated this understanding in his last great work, the Book of Five Rings, which he began writing in his cave dwelling as he approached the end of his life. Unlike other martial arts texts of the time, which focused on specific techniques or schools of thought, Musashi's book was about principles. He organized his insights into 5 rings or spheres of understanding: earth, water, fire, wind, and void. Each ring represented a different aspect of strategy and mastery. The earth ring dealt with fundamentals, the importance of stable stance and correct grip in swordsmanship, but also the broader principle that all achievement must be built on solid foundations. The water ring taught flexibility and adaptability, while fire represented the importance of timing and decisive action. The wind ring discussed the importance of understanding tradition while not being bound by it. And the void represented the highest level of mastery, moving beyond technique to pure understanding. As Musashi entered his final years, he knew he had one last battle to fight, not with swords, but with time itself. He had to ensure that the wisdom he had gained through decades of combat and contemplation would not die with him. This urgent mission would produce 2 of the most influential works in martial arts history, the Book of Five Rings and his final work, Dokudo, The Way of Walking Alone. In his last months, Musashi's living conditions in the cave Reigando took on an almost mythical quality. Picture a warrior sage, now in his early 60s, riding by lamplight in a cave, racing against his failing health to complete his life's work. The setting itself seems to embody the principles he taught, stripped of all unnecessary elements, focused purely on what matters most. But what makes this period truly remarkable is how Musashi chose to spend his final days. Rather than rest on his laurels or seek comfort, he pushed himself to distill everything he had learned into its purest form. The result was Dokudo, a collection of 21 precepts written just days before his death. These principles read like a modern self-help book, yet they were written nearly 400 years ago. Accept everything just the way it is. Do not seek pleasure for its own sake. Do not regret what you have done. Never let yourself be saddened by a separation. Do not let yourself be guided by the feeling of lust or love. These weren't just philosophical musings, they were battle-tested principles that had kept Musashi alive through dozens of life-or-death encounters. Each one was written with the authority of someone who had tested these ideas not in a classroom or meditation hall, but in combat. As word spread that the legendary swordsman was approaching his end, students and admirers gathered near his cave. Among them was his most trusted student, Terao Maganojo, to whom he would entrust both his teachings and his most prized possessions, his swords. The symbolism wasn't lost on anyone present. The man who had developed the two-sword style was now passing on not just his weapons, but the responsibility of preserving his legacy. Musashi's death in 1645 was as deliberate and controlled as his swordsmanship had been. According to records, he died in the formal Seiza sitting position, having composed a death poem as was traditional for a samurai. But even in death, he broke with convention. Instead of the usual melancholic tone of death poems, Musashi's final verses spoke of continuity and natural transformation. Holding the void? Looking at the void, there is no void to hold. There is no void to see. This poem, cryptic as it might seem, encapsulated his lifetime of study. The void he spoke of wasn't emptiness, but rather the state of perfect potential that exists before action, the same state he had accessed countless times in combat. But perhaps the most remarkable aspect of Musashi's story is how his influence has grown rather than diminished over time. Today, copies of The Book of Five Rings can be found in corporate boardrooms across America. His principles are studied by Navy SEALs and Fortune 500 executives alike. Major companies like Apple have used his strategies in their business practices, particularly his emphasis on simplicity and timing. What makes Musashi's teachings so applicable to modern life? The answer lies in their universality. Take his famous principle of crossing. In swordsmanship, it meant understanding the precise moment when your path and your opponent's path intersect. In business, this translates to understanding market timing and competitive strategy. In personal development, it becomes about recognizing and seizing opportunities. Even his two-sword style, Niten Ichi Ryu, offers metaphorical lessons for modern life. The principle of using two tools in harmony, each compensating for the other's weaknesses, can be applied to everything from project management to personal relationships. His emphasis on adaptability and pragmatism over rigid adherence to tradition speaks directly to modern concerns about innovation and disruption. In Silicon Valley, entrepreneurs quote his wisdom about timing and opportunity. On Wall Street, traders apply his principles about reading opponents and controlling emotional responses. In Washington, military strategists study his insights about indirect approaches and psychological warfare. Musashi's teachings have transcended their original context to become a kind of universal manual for strategic thinking. But how exactly did a 17th century samurai's teachings become so influential in modern America? The answer lies in the universality of his principles and their proven effectiveness across different fields. Let's look at some specific examples of how Musashi's wisdom is being applied today. Take, for instance, the U.S. Marine Corps, which includes The Book of Five Rings in its reading list for officers. They particularly value Musashi's insights about the importance of mental preparation and his emphasis on understanding the psychological aspects of conflict. His principle that you must understand what is happening in the minds of your opponents has become a cornerstone of modern military strategy. In the world of business, tech giant Apple has famously employed principles that mirror Musashi's teachings. Steve Jobs was known to be an admirer of Musashi's philosophy, particularly his emphasis on simplicity and timing. Apple's approach to product design, stripping away unnecessary elements to reach the essence of what's needed, perfectly reflects Musashi's principle of removing the unnecessary. Even their product launch timing strategies echo Musashi's teachings about choosing the right moment to strike. Major investment firms on Wall Street regularly reference Musashi's insights about reading opponents and maintaining emotional control. His teaching that you must calm your own mind to understand the minds of your opponents has become particularly relevant in the age of algorithmic trading and market psychology. Hedge fund managers often quote his principle about seeing things as they are, not as you want them to be, a crucial skill in market analysis. But perhaps most surprisingly, Musashi's influence extends into the world of sports psychology. His concept of mushin, or no mind, achieving a state of mental clarity free from conscious thought, aligns perfectly with what modern sports psychologists call flow state. Professional athletes and coaches study his teachings about maintaining focus under pressure and the importance of rigorous preparation. Even in Silicon Valley, entrepreneurs have found wisdom in Musashi's approach to innovation. His willingness to break with tradition and develop new techniques, like his revolutionary two-sword style, resonates with tech innovators. His emphasis on testing ideas in real combat rather than just theorizing about them mirrors the modern fail fast, learn fast approach to product development. Consider how Musashi's principle of attacking with the body, the idea that true strategy involves total commitment, applies to modern entrepreneurship. Successful startup founders often cite this principle when discussing the importance of full commitment to their ventures. The parallel between a samurai fully committing to a sword strike and an entrepreneur fully committing to a business strategy is surprisingly direct. In leadership development, Musashi's teachings about self-mastery have found a particularly receptive audience. His emphasis on continuous improvement and the relationship between personal development and professional success resonates with modern leadership theory. Major corporations now incorporate his principles into their executive training programs. But what makes Musashi's teachings particularly valuable in today's world is their emphasis on practical application over theory. In an age where we're bombarded with information and abstract concepts, his insistence on testing ideas in real-world situations provides a much-needed counterbalance. His famous quote, "Knowledge without wisdom is a load of books on the back of a donkey," seems more relevant than ever in our information-saturated age. This practical approach is especially evident in how his strategic principles are applied in competitive situations. Whether in business negotiations, military operations, or athletic competitions, his emphasis on understanding timing, psychology, and the importance of decisive action continues to prove its worth. Modern neuroscience has even begun to validate many of Musashi's insights about performance under pressure. His teachings about maintaining calm in combat, making decisions without conscious thought, and the importance of proper breathing align remarkably well with our current understanding of how the brain functions under stress. The global influence of Musashi's teachings has also led to interesting cultural cross-pollination. Japanese corporations now study how American companies interpret and apply Musashi's principles, creating a fascinating feedback loop where ancient Japanese wisdom returns to Japan through a modern American lens. What makes a 17th century samurai's teachings not just survive, but thrive in the modern world? The answer lies in the universal truths Musashi discovered through his extraordinary life journey. His story represents something far more profound than just martial arts mastery. It's a testament to the power of relentless self-improvement and the search for deeper understanding. Consider how Musashi's journey mirrors the challenges we face today. In an era of rapid technological change and disruption, his ability to innovate while respecting fundamental principles feels particularly relevant. His two-sword style wasn't just a tactical innovation. It was a complete reimagining of what was possible within his field. This kind of transformative thinking is exactly what modern organizations and individuals strive for. But perhaps Musashi's most important lesson for our time is about the nature of mastery itself. In an age of quick fixes and instant gratification, his life demonstrates that true excellence requires something more. A commitment to continuous improvement and a willingness to look beyond surface-level understanding. His famous saying, "Today is victory over yourself of yesterday," speaks directly to our modern obsession with personal development and growth mindset. The cave where Musashi spent his final days still exists in Japan, preserved as a memorial to his legacy. Visitors today can stand in the same space where he wrote the Book of Five Rings, feeling the connection across centuries. But the real monument to Musashi isn't this physical location. It's the continued relevance and application of his principles across the world. From the trading floors of Wall Street to the dojos of Japan, from Silicon Valley startups to military academies, Musashi's influence continues to grow. His principles have been adopted by people and organizations far beyond anything he could have imagined. Yet the core of his teaching remains unchanged. The pursuit of excellence through disciplined practice, clear perception, and strategic thinking. As we look to the future, Musashi's teachings seem more relevant than ever. In a world of increasing complexity and rapid change, his emphasis on seeing things as they are, rather than how we wish them to be, becomes crucial. His insights about strategy, adaptation, and the importance of mental preparation speak directly to the challenges we face in the 21st century. What would Musashi make of our modern world? he would likely recognize many of the fundamental challenges we face: the need to make decisions under pressure, the importance of reading situations correctly, the balance between tradition and innovation. His principles continue to offer guidance in navigating these challenges. The story of Miyamoto Musashi is more than just a historical tale. It's a roadmap for anyone seeking to excel in their chosen field. His journey from young warrior to master strategist to philosophical teacher shows us that true mastery is a continuous process of growth and refinement. In his life and teachings, we find inspiration for our own pursuits of excellence. As we conclude this exploration of Musashi's life and legacy, consider how his principles might apply to your own journey. Whether you're a business leader, an athlete, an artist, or simply someone striving for personal growth, Musashi's teachings offer timeless wisdom for the path ahead. Remember his words: "You can only fight the way you practice." In whatever field you choose to pursue excellence, let this be your guide. Practice with purpose, seek deeper understanding, and never stop growing. Thank you for joining us on this journey through the life and legacy of history's most renowned samurai. If you found value in Musashi's timeless wisdom and would like to explore more fascinating stories from Japanese history and culture, please consider subscribing to our channel and hitting the like button. Your support helps us continue bringing these incredible historical narratives to life. And remember, as Musashi taught us, every day is an opportunity for growth and learning. See you in our next historical adventure.